All right, I think this is working. All right, I'm live. Just had someone reach out to me. A lot of streaming today. Got the link in the chat. Let me see if they can reach out to me. Let me reload. So apparently, I just had a woman reach out to me. Hopefully, a member from the. Okay. Hey, do you have StreamYard? Hey, I got someone in the chat. There she is. So essentially, you would have to download StreamYard, and then you can actually you can download it for free, and download StreamYard, get it for free. Yeah, there we go. And I think your microphone. And if you want to, you don't have to cam up. I'm 100% believer in Divested Zealot, where you don't have to cam up. I think if it's better for your anonymity, whatever you want to do. But
On here, you know,
there we go.
you know. And so, I mean, my image is available. I just happen to look like hell right now.
No, that's okay. I really want to say thank you for coming on, and I really, really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Oh, no, no problem. I don't know what I could tell you.
Well, if I may, I made a video trying to explain, but I've been watching Divested Zealot and Cynthia G, and it's two things that really fascinate me are, and I said, like, in today's age, it's very hard for people, with the economy and the violence and everything that's happening, for people to just take care of themselves, but for someone to try to go above and beyond that. And someone like Divested Zealot, she's trying to help other women from her community basically
Hmm.
escape Blackistan. And she
Hmm.
tell
I,
she tell
I look. I love her. I adore her. And Cynthia G. Actually, you know what? It's not even a year ago. About this time, I happened to stumble upon Cynthia G. And she, like, listening to her, like watching her videos, like, sent me down a rabbit hole. Eventually I found, like, DZ, and I was like, oh my God, it was like so eye-opening. She's amazing. She is amazing. And she's so witty and she's so passionate. I love her.
exact yes, that passion is. So if I can just get right to it. So I really admire the fact of people who are trying to help other people.
Yeah.
And I understand that for the divested community, the perspective that those two channels take from DC and the ladies on her panel, they take the hashtag all perspective. And for me, I'm trying to use this as sort of a blueprint for my community, which is, and I have examples of essentially children in my community. And of course, I mean the white community. I'm seeing children that are being beaten or even killed. And the parents feel more remorse for the criminal. To use an example, there was a baker in Oakland who witnessed her car being stolen. And when she tried to stop them, I don't recommend you do that. She wasn't even carrying. She was run over and she was killed. And all her friends and family were asking for restorative justice for the carjackers.
Yeah.
There was all
What's restorative justice?
it's just similar on the lines of bail reform and police reform, like instead of they think that suspending a kid or having SROs in a school, they think that that would be creating the prison to pipeline, the school to prison pipeline, even though places like Baltimore are totally comfortable with having violence interrupters in their schools now. So, in other words, former criminals or drug dealers or gangbangers. I don't necessarily understand that. Restorative justice would be you sit down and you talk it out. You got
You
punished.
talk it out.
Yeah.
Okay, you commit a crime and then you talk it out, right? Is that what
Yes.
restorative justice is?
From my
Oh,
reading
that's
and
pretty good,
understanding.
isn't it?
Yeah.
That's pretty good, isn't it? Do what you want, and just say you're sorry. Okay,
Yeah.
that teaches a lesson, right?
Yeah. And to use a more extreme example, when there was the attack last year or the year before on the London Bridge by a person of another faith, by a person from another group, this person was put in prison for trying to bomb the London Stock Exchange. And the two people who helped him get out of prison were two people, two white people. He killed them on the bridge. And then his parents said that they didn't want him deported.
But they don't want him deported.
Yes. If I could use,
Well, you know what? Well, let him serve his 25 years or 30 years, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. How about that?
yeah, that's well.
Okay.
And and if I could use one more recent example from Temple University, because I'm from South Philadelphia, Samuel Collington was carjacked in, I think it was late November 2021, and he was carjacked by a Pookie. And his friends said that even though he was dead, the reason he's dead is because that their community is suffering and that they wouldn't want the death of their friend to result in more police in the black community of North Philadelphia.
What, they don't want the police to round up the actual criminals, not just the guy that's walking down the street minding his business, but like the actual criminals who are committing crimes. They don't want the
Yes.
police to.
And I,
Oh,
I
okay,
have
okay.
I have that article.
No, I know. You know what? I believe that you probably know a lot more about this than I do, and the reason why is I'm gonna tell you. The whole topic we're talking about. I am divested. I don't listen to the news of what's going on in Blackistan. I just stay as far away from it as I possibly can. I want nothing to do with it. What I hear is going on. I don't want to hear anymore because this is what it has devolved down into. And as far as I'm concerned, um, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like my hands are completely off. I'm not giving it any energy. God bless those people. Save yourself or fucking sink.
Yeah.
I don't know because there's no logic going on there. I stay away from it. I'm like, I found a corner of the world and that's where I retreat to, and that's where I get to live my life and be happy and safe. You know what? Nobody's safe, right? Anything can happen anywhere. And I do a lot of traveling. But I try to keep I'm aware of my surroundings. I gauge my chances, and the places that I go to have a low rate of anything happening to me that's so common in Blackistan. But anything can happen to anybody. I'm
Sure.
very street smart. But as far as all the trauma, all the bullshit, all the crime that goes on over there, I don't know. I don't want to know it. As far as I'm concerned, the last time I was actually really aware of what was happening was the horrible ass late 80s and throughout the 90s when everybody was on crack. And I had to pass through Blackistan all the time. So I know how degenerate it is. I know that there's no low. I know it's just freaking lawlessness, and now it's generations of lawlessness. And you know what? I save my peace. I back away, and I'm like, oh, maybe I'll spend I'll go to Mexico City for Easter because some people gonna do what they gonna do. I escaped.
Yeah.
Oh, did that sound horrible? I didn't mean that to sound horrible, but I really am. I'm so hands off.
No, that's I think that's exactly the type of, and this is, and again, I thank you for coming onto my channel and speaking to me. It's, I think the bigger message here is the fact that at some point in your life, you just decided, at least from my perspective, that you decided that you matter first. You're going to put
Right,
yourself first and you're going to value your life
right. You know,
over.
over the culture, over these expectations. I'm older. Okay, I'm a boomer. I got that going on. I got my parents were, the greatest generation and the silent generation. And they were like, you know what? They were actually really, really interesting people and very advanced, you know. But and my politics pretty much almost directly reflects my parents' politics. So but yeah, I hit a certain point where I was like, you know what? I I'm not going along with that program. That is really not for me. I Here's the thing. When I was growing up, I was influenced more by the books that I read than the people that were around me because I would lose myself in books. And so that influenced me. And then I would look up and I would look around and I was like, you know what, this is not as good as these books. And so some of my values I picked up these old school, old fashioned values in books about, what men do, what women do, possibilities, history, you name it. And then I would look up and I was like, that doesn't look good. And so I knew that, like,
Hmm.
I'm gonna have to go in a different direction. And I went in a different direction. I just at a certain point I just looked up and I rejected it, and my whole family looked at me and basically said, "Good for you, good for you." Nobody objected. They just looked and they said, "Yeah, we can see that," because
So,
they had their hands full dealing with my sister's bullshit. And when they saw me escape Blackistan, when they saw me go in a complete different direction with everything, they were like, "We don't have to worry about you. Go ahead, girl."
so your parents supported your decision to divest. Would you call it just divesting?
Yeah, they were. You know what? I come from a large family. I'm one of the ones at the bottom in the middle, mixed up in there somewhere. You know what? They By the time they got to me, they were exhausted. I could do whatever the hell I wanted to do. They were like, "Oh, she's not pregnant. She doesn't have boyfriends hitting her. She's got a good job. She went to college. She's having a nice. We don't have to worry about her.
You're not
Good."
muling. You're not muling for anybody.
No, no, they were like, I was the auntie that would show up with like, a champagne and a bottle of vodka. Like, hello, and then I would have fun, and then I'd be like, bye, and leave them all to their drama. And I got to get money to pay my light bill. Oh, he's not working. Oh, she has a split lip. Oh, somebody is just batshit crazy. I'm like, ooh, gotta go. Okay. And because of that, because I got to choose happiness and common sense, they didn't have to worry about me. And so, yeah, I kind of had their de facto blessing, you know. And I still went to church. Okay. I can still sit down there and they start throwing Bible verses and telling stories. I can get right back in there with them because, I was raised a United Methodist. I think I've got pretty good morals,
Okay.
you know. So I wasn't out there crazy. I was out there fun, smart, doing the right thing, keeping my legs closed, waiting for something that was real, something that was worth it. and having a good time without the trauma because I was influenced by books, and that's what I thought women could do.
And could I ask if you would mind, what were some of those books and what were some of the things that you said they taught you men to be men and women to be women and
Oh, all the old school romance books that they give to teenage girls. The
no, I haven't.
beautiful Aj. Oh
I
no.
before
Oh, okay. This is before they got dirty. Okay. I can tell you about the ones I read, and they all have the same plot. They all have the same plot. It's the beautiful, naive ingenue, you know, who somehow is thrown into the eyes of this man who's like, the dark, masculine, brooding. She hates him and
at
but
first.
somehow they're bond together, and if somehow somewhere down the road there's some kind of little drama and they realize they love each other, he sweeps her away and everything is beautiful. That's the basic plot of all of the books that I read.
It sounds
Which
like
and
the
it sounded
story of
pretty good
Beauty
to
and the
me.
sounds like the story of Beauty and the Beast.
Well, you know what? Yeah, they take those classic stories and they reinterpret them for women and girls to train us to like to look forward to certain things, to think that these things are what we want and what are due us. Okay, those are the stories I read. That was my interpretation. But when I would look up, I wouldn't see that in my community.
What did you see?
And I was like, no. What did I see? I saw a lot of women like just working their asses off. That's what I saw. I saw a lot of men who were like just abdicating. Like, you know, okay, okay. I'm a boomer, so my parents' generation, the ones that fought World War II, these were the men who went to war. My dad and my stepdad both fought in World War II. These
Wow.
are the men who hunted, they fished, they would take us like, camping Sault Ste. Marie. Just these are men who did they were men. You know what I mean? Men. Oh, tinkle with the car a little bit. I don't, whatever shit. It's springtime. We're gonna barbecue even though it's only 52 degrees. you know,
Make some steaks.
he and his friends like standing around the backyard and somebody's got a half a pint between like four men because they don't really drink. They just kind of taste it. I grew up with those guys. And then I would look at my generation and I was like, oh, not even, not freaking even. Because they had the expectation like every woman was supposed to work like them and do everything else. I was like, it was the whole, they talk about 50-50. It was 50-50. My generation slid into that. And I was like, no, no, because that's not the way men are supposed to act. And so I was like, if I can't have what I want, I don't want none of it. You're not dragging me down with this bullshit. And so I went in a different direction.
So it was just the idea, I guess I don't know if you want to call it old school parenting or old school conservatism or
Yes,
just
yeah. My family is definitely conservative, but not like the creepy, weird conservative that we have out there nowadays. I'm like, these people are like really, really embarrassing. They're anti-intellectual conservatives. There used to be uh, different parts of the parties. You had conservative Democrats, you had liberal Republicans, right?
yes.
You had a real spectrum. Now it's like I don't know. It's very different now.
Well, if I may, I believe I think the phrase that's overtaking a lot of the Republican Party right now is they're called neocons. And if I could extrapolate a little bit to give an example, two of the largest two of the largest internet shows on YouTube are Blaze and Ben Shapiro's show, which is the Daily Wire. And there was a real big split last year with a gentleman named Dave Rubin. He's a gay man, and him and his husband adopted two children, but they each paid two women $50,000 to essentially deprive them of a mother. And this was seen as acceptable by these two, what are essentially seen as conservative outlets. It was seen as acceptable for men to pay women to take their children. And
Oh, for conservatives, that this is okay.
The Blaze, which is run by Glenn Beck, and Ben Shapiro, who runs the Daily Wire. Dave Rubin, I believe he works for the Daily Wire, and they couldn't understand the pushback. A lot of more, if you want to say, Christian or religious or I don't know, old school conservatives.
Mm-hmm.
They were basically saying that this was terrible. You're paying a woman to take her child from her. But these two companies really couldn't understand what the problem was. So the new term that we use for people like that is neoconservative or neocon.
Oh.
It's basically like a viewpoint that a Democrat would have had maybe 10, 15 years ago. Do you by chance remember the interview with Alan Hayes and Obama in 2004 in Chicago?
No.
They had a debate for the senator seat of Illinois, and Alan Hayes was the Republican representative.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically asked him the question, what do you think of marriage? What do you think of gay marriage? And he had this perception based on what he said was just the actual definition of what marriage was. He goes, if we look at the Bible and if we look at the wording of marriage basically meant to procreate. And he said he would even be against people in their 70s or 80s getting married because they wouldn't be able to have children. And yes, it's on YouTube. That was his perspective. He said the whole concept of marriage is to procreate. And he said, once we start changing words then things lose their meaning. And that was in 2004. And the debate is interesting because race isn't mentioned for about 35 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And Obama is the one who brings up race at about the 35-minute mark, talking about how he was profiled, I believe, at a party at Harvard. But I just use that example because 15 years ago, Democrats were even saying they didn't want to give marriage away to, I guess you could say, the Rainbow Coalition or the multi-letter mafia, as DZ says. But
well, I'll tell you, the Democratic Party has shifted radically, which I'm shocked at. Well, I'm surprised that Obama said something that conservative because I know the church that he attended, that he got married in, had his kids baptized, and all that. I've been to that church.
wow.
It's actually a really fun church. It's really colorful and a lot of fun. It's like, woo, you go there, and it's like, wow, you're out of your seat.
In Chicago.
Yeah, in Chicago. Yeah. On the
Wow.
far south side of Chicago. It's a lot of fun. If you go on the first Sunday of the month, that's when the choir is like doing their thing and they come out with all these colorful banners. But the first Sunday of the month in church, well, I'm a Protestant, so we love the first Sunday of the month,
Oh, that's
But
cool.
they have, it's a really cool church. But I also know the politics over there. I'm surprised he said something that conservative from that church because that church is very left of field. Proudly so. And that is definitely right of that church. I'm surprised he said something that conservative. But I know that he was not pro gay marriage. And it was only through compromise of politics when he was when he was the president. And Joe Biden let it slip some months before that he was pro-gay marriage. But Obama wasn't, and it made Obama like shift his position because everybody was like, "Yeah, hey, let's do this."
Interesting.
I remember that. And if he was that conservative, I'm surprised because he did not come on my radar until he was running for president, and I'm from Illinois.
Yeah, I heard he was only a councilman or like a senator for 3 years. Like
Yeah,
a
he was
not.
downstate. Nobody pays attention to anybody downstate. It was run by Madigan and his crew. Okay, that's just a done deal. That's just backroom politics. This is Illinois backroom politics. Nobody pays attention because they decide this in the back room. So whoever the state senators and all of that, nobody cares about them. Not really.
Yeah, Chicago's been in the news a lot lately. I don't really know a lot about the politics. I'm more aware of Philadelphia's politics just because that's where I'm from, and
Right.
I left there because it was
Hey,
just
sweetie.
it was getting.
And that was my son walking through. Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
My son, not my son, as Susie
Your
says.
thun, your
My
thun,
son,
your
son,
husson,
my child,
your child.
with his very deep voice, just like his dad. It's like, oh, here's Odin, and here's, and Zeus.
So you're from Chicago,
I am born and bred, third generation.
and you said your father and your stepfather served in World War II.
Yes, they did.
Were there when you were growing up? Were there more men in your community like them, or were there
Yes,
more? Okay.
that's the community I grew up in. Okay, here's here's me. Um, my uh, when my dad decided that his attention span had run out with my mother, he did the poor man's divorce and absconded. Okay, and so that kind of threw us into chaos because my mother was a homemaker. You know, he owned a liquor store. My mother was a homemaker. So when he absconded, suddenly my mother, who had been a homemaker, who had no skills, no education, no nothing, just a whole gang of kids. She got heavily involved in the civil rights movement. She was in it's called the Woodlawn Organization, which was they're affiliated with Jesse Jackson's whole kit and caboodle. And so she did that for a couple of years, and she got in the papers, and she did a whole bunch of stuff. But while she was doing all that, she snagged her new husband, which is my stepfather, who also fought in World War II, and said, "This is a bunch of bullshit. We're out of here," because that's when Jim Crow ended. And so we left the south side of Chicago, and we went all the way out into the suburbs to get away from black people.
Oh, wait.
Okay.
Can we pause for a second? So
Yeah.
if okay, so I just want to so while you were when your mother met your stepfather in
hmm
Chicago,
hmm
Jim Crow was still on the
Yes.
books,
Yes.
and then after Jim Crow, you're saying you
Right.
didn't stay, you left.
Immediately, we got the hell out of Dodge.
Oh, please explain that to me. Please talk to me
Okay, here. Okay, I'm gonna tell you the story. All
because
right.
I hear in school you're told the opposite.
What?
In public
What do you
school, what? Well, the if I may, the expectation would have been that your mother being involved with this group, with the civil rights group, once the once Jim Crow was over, then you would have stayed and we all would have lived in harmony and in utopia. But you're saying that once segregation ended, you decided to leave.
Okay. Here, let me tell you a little bit about segregation because I actually lived in segregation.
Please.
All right. Segregation meant it really didn't matter how much money you had. You had to live within a certain address, a certain zip code. I don't care if you were a doctor, a surgeon, you owned businesses, or you were just Pookie. Everybody was locked into these certain addresses to together, certain zip codes. This the black section. This where you live. You cannot leave, and if you do, we will burn you out. You have to live here. So we were all living chic to jowl, right? It is what it is. There were better neighborhoods, of course, and then there were shitty neighborhoods. But we were all living kind of like cheek to jowl. So when Jim Crow ended, what happened about that time? My mom had snagged her new husband, and we were living on the south side of Chicago in a very good neighborhood. And my stepfather said that he would get up and he had to be at work at he had to be at work at 6 o'clock in the morning, and so he would leave out of the house at like a quarter after 5. He got robbed like 3, 4 times this one month. And he was like, "We are out of here. We are gone. Fuck these niggas. We gone."
So, so I just want to make sure I understand. It wasn't white men with MAGA hats and bleach and carrying a noose at 2:30 in the morning at near a sandwich shop, like Juicy
Well,
Smollier said it was. It
no,
was
no. It was Pookie and Ray Ray robbing my stepdaddy while he's trying to go to work. They clocking him and trying to rob him. And he said, "That's enough of that. We done had enough of that." Because eventually they're gonna put a bullet in his head. And so
wow.
he told us, he said, "Look, we're leaving. Don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody at school. Don't tell any of your friends. This is a secret because if you tell anybody, they're gonna come and they're gonna take all of our shit and we're gonna have nothing. Don't tell anybody we're leaving." And
Wow.
so
And
before I knew it,
no, please. I just have a question. And that was in the 60s?
this was 1970. By then, this is 1970.
1970. Okay.
Maybe it was 69, 1970. Right in there, right in there.
I know that Chicago, I believe, had their worst homicide year in 1974 of like 940.
Wouldn't surprise me.
I think that was their highest.
Wouldn't surprise me.
And you guys moved out to the boonies or the sticks or
We moved where you know what? Let me tell you this. I grew up next to a fallow cornfield. That's how far out we moved.
wow. Can I really appreciate you. And where you moved, what was the demographic makeup, if I may? If that's okay.
White, white, white. And I mean, there were like more and more. There were more black people coming out, and then there was a very working class black suburb just down the street. And everybody, we knew everybody. Everybody's in everybody else's divisions, subdivisions. And then we had some of us had to share certain schools. So I grew up around black people who had like nice little houses, and the dads went to work, and the mothers maybe worked, maybe were at home, and there were kids with like postage size lawns, and everybody was cool. Okay, everybody was cool. I grew up in a bubble.
Do you, do you now? What is your perception of why you think they were cool? Was it because do
Well,
you think it
because
was?
you know what, there wasn't very much crime. There was a lot of. I grew up in a bubble. I don't think you understand the bubble that boomers grew up in. There was nothing but we were making money. There was sunshine, roses, and money. Black people were doing things they never been able to do before. And I mean, and some of the stuff it sounds really silly. You're like, but there were so many firsts that we were all so excited about everything. And I grew up in a white neighborhood, and I went to white schools, and I went to a white church, and I was so happy whenever I would see black people move out there more and more and more, and even another black family at our church. I'm so thrilled. But there were these men. It was my father's generation that was leading the charge. But when they started to die, and my generation started stepping up, they were not half the men their fathers were. They were lesser men,
Could
and they
you?
came crack,
Okay.
and that was that.
Could I? And I do apologize. I only have about maybe 12 more minutes. Would you be willing to do this again, if possible?
Sure. I'm sorry. I'm just talking. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
no.
a whole
Look,
back and you can ask questions.
no. So again, uh, please understand.
Yes, yes,
I,
yes.
I,
Anytime,
I,
anytime you want. I can't Friday because I've got like stuff to do. But
sure, and again, I really appreciate this. Thank you very much. But please understand. Let me put it this way. I lived in South Philly for about 16 years, and
hmm
I saw what I saw, and I've experienced what I've experienced, and I've even said like my name, big time, came from a drug dealer who got mad at me because I didn't want to sell drugs. And he said to me, "Oh,
wow,
he said, oh, you think you're big time? You think you're better than me?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm not destroying the lives of the people around me like you are. I am big time."
okay, yeah, that
Uh,
is big.
uh,
If that's big
uh,
time, then I'm big time. Thank
yeah,
you for the nickname.
right. If yeah, that's why I've kept it.
Okay,
And,
hey, you
and
know what? You earned that nickname, didn't you?
well, well, my I had a stepfather go to prison for selling drugs, and
So you knew
you
better.
know, so it's and when I talk to, unfortunately, when I talk to other white people who have never lived in an area with a lot of black criminality,
hmm
they're, if you want to call it hand waving or deflecting or racism or systemic institutional.
Oh, pity those poor people. It's their circumstances. Oh, you don't understand what they're going through. And this is just a reaction. Okay, yeah, yeah, keep going.
Poverty creates crime, and it's
Look
and when
how
it,
look
when
look how many Hispanic people are poor as hell, and you don't see them acting like fools, do you? I mean, so they got a segment that's acting like fools, but you don't see. I don't see any Mexican men, any Puerto Rican men standing up talking about Puerto Rican women ain't shit. Mexican women, are the lowest of the low.
if I
Not
if
like,
I may if I may quote Aaliyah from Divested Zealot, she said the main difference she sees between the men in the Mexican community and the black community is when the Mexican women go to the doctor for when they're pregnant, the Mexican men go with them to the
the
doctor.
whole family goes with them. My
Yes.
husband is from El Salvador.
Oh wow.
That's my first husband. My husband right now is Chinese.
Wow. Oh
I'm
my
moving around.
gosh. I want to
My
talk to
first
you
husband, he
more.
passed away. I have a second husband because my first husband passed away.
I'm sorry he
But
passed.
you know what? Me too. Me too.
Well, let me backtrack a little bit if I may. So you left Chicago when civil rights ended, and
hmm
then you went to a cornfield. You lived
Yes,
next to a cornfield,
I
and
did.
and at that time you said there was money, and I believe that was still the time when one income was sufficient to pay for an entire household.
Right, right. And
Okay.
so I knew a lot of homemakers, black and white.
When and you now you did say that you were happy to see more of your group move into
Yeah,
where
because
you were.
let me tell you something.
Please.
I moved into an area. Look, when Jim Crow ended and black people started moving out of the neighborhoods, they started moving into neighboring neighborhoods in Chicago. And the white people said, hell no. And they ran to the suburbs, right? And then here comes my black ass family right behind them. And they were like, oh man, these people can't just get rid of them. It wasn't like we were welcome when we first got out there. They had to get to know us.
Now, now that impression that they had, what in your experience, what was that impression based on?
They thought it was gonna be Pookie, Ray Ray. We didn't have baby mamas in them days. Well, we did. We did have baby mamas in them days. But they thought, here comes this black family, these niggers from the city. We tried to get away from their criminal asses, and here they are out here, and they probably gonna have the damn, freaking car on the lawn, and barbecuing on the sidewalk, and
So
just everything. But we weren't like that. And so it took a minute for them to kind of relax. And the next thing we know, we had neighbors and we were neighbors.
and when they got to know you, Was there
Yeah,
ever was the hostility over at that
it
point,
was it
or
was over. Well, we know who are the assholes, right? You know who's an asshole. And then you know who knows better, who like learned how to relax with you, and now you're cool with them. Like, my next door neighbor, big ass Italian family, 13 damn kids, right? A
wow,
zillion of them. And we're always playing in each other's yard, we're playing with their kids, blah, blah, blah. They didn't care. If one of them got in trouble, he would whip that belt out, and all of us got a piece of it. And I told him one time, I was like, I'm not even your kid. He said, you shouldn't hang around with me. Whack! But when it was time to eat, everybody sat around. There was no difference. They treated us like just one of the kids, one of the
family.
kids.
That definitely is the idea of even punishing another person's children. I can't imagine how that would go today with
Well, back in
mammies.
them days, people hit their kids. This is before DCFS. Okay. Okay. People used to do stuff to their kids just out in the open, and it was like, you that's just how it was.
Right,
Now
right.
everybody was like, people will have a freaking heart attack. But in them days, I don't know.
And
In them days, I'll say this.
sure.
In those days, I believe that a lot of parents thought if all of your children made it to being an adult, it was a blessing. To lose at least one was an acceptable loss. There. How's that for a different generational truth?
Well, that's why you have to have 13 kids, right?
Right. Because they not all gonna make it. And there's no birth control. you know? Some of them ain't gonna be shit. Hopefully, a few of them will live to be old and help you out when you get old. People had a bunch of kids. Now, my parents' generation, I think a lot of them had like 4 or 5 kids, you know. And then my generation, 2 kids. My son's generation, I don't even know if he's ever gonna have kids. Because I'm like, I don't care. Just be happy.
Yeah, I have a daughter, and my wife is pregnant again,
Mm,
and
mm,
we were trying. I was trying to do an interview. I live in. I moved further into like rural Pennsylvania to escape from Philly, but the
Amish
local,
country?
close enough.
Oh, okay.
They have their own problems. They're not.
Oh,
They're not
oh
free of.
yes, yes, they a hot mess. They a hot mess.
Yeah, the puppy mills and the they're brutal. They can be brutal to each other, especially some of the younger girls. It's really unfortunate.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was something that I saw a documentary something, and they were talking about um, it, I'm sorry, justice for some of these girls.
Yes,
So, but
women
I
are
don't. That's all I know.
well. There's a. I was trying to interview a student from the local community college here. The local community college here, to give an example, is run by a gentleman who wrote a big letter about Floyd and saying, what a terrible thing happened to him, and we all have to come together and we have to recognize this and recognize that. And I just found it interesting when I was trying to get the student to talk to me because he can no longer pursue his profession at the school because every single class he's basically just told how evil he is. And he even,
Oh,
if he disagrees in class, he fails.
what?
And I was trying to talk to him. I said, "Look, you should come and do an interview." And I think this needs to be talked about, but he doesn't want to do anything. And
Mm,
he's the first person who told me about Floyd. So I said, "Well, how do you feel about home invaders?" And he said, I don't know what you mean." I said, "Well, do you know who Araceli Enriquez is?" And he said, "No." I said, "Well, you know, that's the woman whose home he broke into and put a gun against her stomach. The pregnant thing was actually incorrect. That wasn't a true story. She had a son who was on the couch at home." I said, "Do you feel sorry for her?"
oh, you're talking about George Floyd. Oh, well, that doesn't surprise
Yes.
me. Look at that big old criminal. Look at that big old criminal. Dumb big old criminal.
Well,
Okay. How is that a surprise to anybody? That is the dregs of society. A junkie, dumbass criminal.
did you did you like the trial with his girlfriend when his girlfriend said on the one hand
Oh,
he called her mama, and on the one hand she said, we would do he would give me pills and we would do this, and he always had energy and he was always running around. It's like, yeah, that's coke. That's
yeah,
it
okay,
gives
because
it
he's
gives
a
it,
junkie.
right. But then in the same breath she was said, but he also loved kids. He
Okay,
was
because
such a
that's creepy.
because well, like saying he's a good father, and I'm not sure how that works, how you can be on drugs all the time
Okay,
and
because
also
that's
be
not
a
a good
good father.
father.
Right.
Okay. Ah, good fathers aren't junkie criminals. Good fathers provide. Good
Provide,
father, good,
protect, problem
yeah.
solve.
Thank you. All three of them. Yes. Yes,
Right.
sir. Yes.
That's a great
Yes.
phrase. I love that phrase.
I love that. Yes. You know, him, I look, what happened to him, it shouldn't have happened. Okay? I don't agree with what I know cops. I know cops for real. I almost married a cop. I almost married a guy, not a cop. He was actually Cook County Sheriff, and he works at Supermax at
Yeah, Cook.
Cook
Yeah,
County
Cook
Jail.
County. Yeah, Chicago. Yeah,
Yeah,
Cook
okay,
County.
right. Thank you. I date a lot of Chicago cops. I
Yeah.
dated FBI agents. All right, so I know what I'm talking about. It shouldn't have happened. But the fact of the matter is that they made that man like he is freaking, some kind of damn idol to look up to. Of all the people in the world, him, him, this is what the black community has come down to. This is who we are idolizing. And that's why the culture is just slipping further and further down.
And I have so many. If I could ask you one more question, then please. So Cook County, um, what was your? How am I trying to say this? When you were around police officers from
Hmm.
Chicago,
Hmm.
what was your impression of what they thought about your community? Did you do you do you think black cops are harsher on their people who in their community?
You know what? See, something like that I never really considered until somebody brought up the question about that, and then I saw the James Baldwin little piece when he talks about it. I never thought about that, and I never heard any of the cops talk like that. What I heard was more of the blue against you, period. Okay. I dated this one cop, and he was like, and I was, I had a different profession at the time. And he said, hey, the difference between you and me is if you go into one of these, like, condos or, penthouses or whatever it is, um, you say, hey, what a beautiful place. Oh, you know, I like your view. Oh, this is lovely. He says, I go into those places and I say, hey, hey, put your hands where I can see them. So I never heard black, white. I just heard trouble.
So to at least to you, because it sounds like you've had a lot of experience. Is it
Well,
well?
I'm not the horde of Babylon now, okay?
I just
But
mean life experience. Life experience.
of course, I'm an
Yeah.
older woman. I didn't get married until I was almost 40, and so that's a long time. And I worked, the field that I worked in. I worked in catering. I worked in the food industry. I worked in high-end catering. And so I got to see a lot of people. I got to go a lot of places. I was exposed to a lot, and I had a wonderful time. I've had a good life.
Mm, Let me
Okay.
let me try this.
And I
For
like cops.
if you're, I can ascertain if you saw your father and your stepfather in the uniform. Maybe that
No,
would.
no, not at all. Mm-mm. My dad was a douchebag. He was handsome and he
Oh,
was charming and he worked very hard. Still a douchebag. And my stepdad, no, he didn't have that kind of attitude. I mean, he had maybe up underneath. The steel was up underneath, but on the outside, he was a pretty, he's a pretty chill guy. No, I like cops because I like to see men who are strong, who are I can look at him and tell I can lean on him. I can depend on him.
So
I like masculine men.
okay. Did so do you see the job as someone who draws a line in the sand and says, not while I'm on duty? Something like that?
I would hope so, but more than just a dirty, hairy attitude. I mean, because you got to understand. I don't know. You know what? I look. I don't know. I don't get involved, but I know that sometimes there are extenuating circumstances, and not everybody is like, not everybody's an asshole. So you got to be able to discern. But I like the
Okay.
fact that if anything goes down, if anything comes down the pike, I can depend on this guy. That's what I like.
Do you think it makes sense when a cop is around that environment all the time that they will judge people harsher and they will react faster than
Yeah, of
someone
course,
who's
because
not
they're
around that element?
paranoid. They're paranoid. They don't know what's gonna pop off. And I live in Chicago. I don't know what the hell's gonna pop off.
Yeah.
Hey, in my neighborhood, I looked out the window. I heard a pack, right? I looked out the window. Somebody was shooting at somebody else and ran into a building across the street from where I work. We were looking at
Yeah.
it. So, you work in that environment. But here, I'll tell you this quick story because I know you gotta go, but it's kind of funny.
Please.
Okay. I was walking home from work and I saw a street sign. It said, speed limit, I think 20 miles an hour, whatever. And it was just on the it was on the ground and the pole was down and somebody had taken everything kind of apart and it was kind of beat up and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I'll take this home and give to my son to put up in his room. This is, the city. And so I'm walking with a couple of friends of mine because we all live in the neighborhood and we're all old ladies. And so I get to this one corner, like maybe a block down, and this cop car pulls up and he says, "Hey, ladies, what are you doing?" And like we all turned to him and we were like, "Hey, how's it going?" And so they were like, "What you got there?" I said, "Oh, look at the street sign. This is so cool." And he says, "Oh, that's city property. You can't take that." I said, "Oh," I go, "Do you want me to take it and put it back?" And he's like, "No." And then another cop car pulls up and kind of like, boxes us in.
Yeah.
And so we're all looking at the other cop car, and these guys, the first cops, they're sitting in their seat and they're laughing their asses off at us. you know. And then this woman cop, she gets out of the second cop car and she comes over to me and she says, "My camera is on." And I said, "Okay." And she said, "You can't have that street sign. Somebody called in on you." I was like, "What?"
Oh, wow.
She said, She goes, "Several people called in on you and they even described you and everything." I said, "Okay, I can take the sign back. I'm really sorry. I just thought it was trash." And she says, "No, I'll take it." I said, "Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you so much." And then the other guy's going, he goes, "Unless you want to spend all afternoon at, at the station." I was like, "No, no, thanks. I want to go home and eat breakfast, because it was like about 7:30 in the morning." And then I left, I went home. That was my last interaction with cops. They were all white, I'm black, and my friends were Latino.
What did you, and what was your initial impression of that interaction? What did you think about that?
I thought it was fine. I mean, it was fun. It was no muss, no fuss. I didn't know it was illegal. They weren't like, "Up against the wall. Where's your ID?" They were just like, "We'll take that." Like, okay, that was it. I mean, if
So
they
you,
had asked me for, I don't care. I'm a law-abiding citizen.
well, the media paints a very different story of police interaction. So I'm
I've
always curious.
never had, I've never had a bad experience with the cops. But again, I will tell you, I don't have a lot of experiences with the cops because I there's no need. And the
Well,
experiences I have with the cops are, them trying to get my phone number so they can take me on a date. Cops like,
ah,
yum yum. That's in the past. In the past. In the past. I'm an old lady now.
well, I really, really appreciate you speaking to me. Thank you very, very much. Would it be possible to do this again, maybe tomorrow, if you have the time?
Um, it would have to be early tomorrow because I have something to do after 10. If that's okay with you.
Oh no, that would be great. Please. What time would work for you? I would really like to ask you more about when you moved out away from Chicago, if I could.
Oh, okay. Let's see. I would say like maybe 8ish, about 8 o'clock. That's a good solid time, right?
Would 8:15 work?
8:15 would be good.
Oh, thank you so much. I really thank you very much for coming on, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you again.
Okay, I'm okay. Talk to you later.
All right, take care.
Okay, bye.